Alright, so check this out. My wife and I saw our 5-year-old daughter, but older. This happened a few months ago. In early January, my wife and I were in the kitchen, prepping lunch and chatting. Our 5-year-old daughter was in the living room watching TV. No one else in the house. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and the layout of the house allows us to see a bit of the corridor and hallway outside the kitchen door. My wife was cutting up food and I was sitting behind her. As we talked, she started to turn around to face me, but stopped midway, staring at the kitchen door. She froze up completely, and I remember asking, "What is it?" She let out a loud gasp, and then I instinctively looked toward the door as well. I saw a brief glimpse of what seemed like a person turning the corner towards the living room. It happened very fast, but I was sure I saw someone. I panicked. My immediate first thought was, someone has just broken in, and my daughter's alone in the living room. The only thing I thought of doing was grabbing a knife, and I yelled at my wife to call the police. I rushed into the corridor and into the living room. In the living room, there was nothing. My kid was just sitting on the couch, watching Bluey. She looked at me and she asked, "What's up?" with a confused expression. Now, mind you, I have a knife in my hand and I probably looked a little crazy. I tried to play it off and I asked if she saw anyone come in the room, and she hadn't and was clueless about what I was talking about. I searched the living room and the rest of the house. No sign of a break-in, windows closed, and we live on the 3rd floor. If someone had tried to escape that way, they would have fallen really, really bad. I checked everywhere. Wardrobes, behind curtains, the front door. Nothing. No signs of entry, and the front door was totally closed, and we didn't hear anyone come in or anything of the sort. This all happened within maybe 10 minutes. I went back to the kitchen where my wife was crying. She had frozen up and didn't call the cops. I calmed her down. She got scared pretty bad, and she couldn't even speak properly. When she calmed down, she explained to me what she saw. I, personally, only caught a very quick glimpse of the thing turning around the corner. However, my wife says that she got a good look at it. She says that she saw what looked like a tall woman dressed in a floral dress and high heels walking across the corridor. Neither of us had heard any sound though. She said the woman stopped when she felt like she was seen, looked at my wife right in the eyes, and my wife swears the figure looked like our daughter, but older. This happened in the span of seconds, when she first froze up in shock. When my wife gasped, the woman hurried and turned the corner into the living room, and I only saw this last part. If I hadn't caught a glimpse of it myself, I would be asking my wife to go into therapy or something. But I know something was there. We never figured out what we saw, but it was definitely the strangest moment of my life, and I know it happened. I just wanted to share with you here. I got a phone call from my girlfriend from an alternate reality. Yesterday, at 5 p.m., I was playing the new OG map game mode on Fortnite while sitting on a Discord call with my friends. Suddenly, I received a missed phone call from a number with no caller ID. Usually, I don't answer calls from unfamiliar numbers, but I was expecting a call from a job that I had just applied for. Thinking it might be them, I decided to answer. Upon answering the second call from the same no caller ID number, I asked, "Hello?" The loud gunshots and sound effects from Fortnite made it hard to hear at first, so I removed my headset to better listen. The female voice on the other end sounded like my girlfriend, and her tone seemed offended when I asked who it was. To confirm it was her, I inquired about the caller ID, and the response matched how my girlfriend would react if she was genuinely confused. She asked to come over, suggesting a Lyft instead of Uber because of a $5 discount that I had for the Lyft ride, and also we share the same Lyft and Uber accounts. Despite being surprised by the accurate details, something felt off, especially since she didn't know the driver was even close by. Slightly suspicious, I bought the Lyft but then hesitated when she asked for the money instead so she can buy it herself. This led me to consider a potential AI scam, so I canceled the ride, especially since she had mentioned not wanting to come home with me earlier that day. Upon me dialing my actual girlfriend, she denied making any calls, leaving me puzzled. The bizarre encounter left me contemplating the idea of alternate realities intersecting due to her very accurate responses, as no other explanation seemed plausible. Perhaps in a different universe, or just an AI scam trying to get money from me. It was too coincidental though, and someone would have to be stalking me to know those things. I do think it's possible that higher versions of ourselves exist with everything that we desire, waiting to be manifested through the energy that we create around us. Please share your thoughts or similar experiences if you've encountered anything like this. A strange person walked into the house and said hello. Years ago, when I was around 18 and lived with my parents, I was sitting in the living room chatting with my mom and sister. My dad had gone out to play pool a few hours earlier. We heard the back door open, which wasn't visible from the living room, and we continued to chat as we assumed it was my dad coming home. As soon as we heard the footfalls of the person inside the house walking toward the living room, we all paused and stared at each other, confused. My dad was a tall, heavy man and had very distinct footsteps, and these were different. They didn't have the same weight or pattern. My first thought was, did Dad invite someone over? Even though that's not something he ever did. As the footsteps got closer, we heard a man's voice call, "I'm home." And I looked to my mom and sister, who both seemed as concerned as I was. The voice sounded nothing like my dad's or like anyone's that we recognized. I don't think he could sound like that if he tried. I can't describe it other than that it was a completely different voice. It was someone else's voice. My mom stood up, shaken, just as my dad rounded the corner into the living room. We just stared at him in shock. "Dad? Was someone else in the house?" I asked. And he gave me a puzzled look and asked what I was talking about. My mom then asked, whose voice was that in the house that we just heard? And we asked if he was speaking in some kind of different voice, and he, baffled, said no. There was no one else in the house, and he was speaking in his normal voice. It's unsettled my mom, my sister, and I ever since. It's hard to convey over text, but it was an entirely different person's voice. If it was only me who was there, I would have doubted myself, but we all had the exact same experience. It was like the universe got confused and assigned the wrong person, but corrected it at the last second. We still talk about the time that Dad came home, but it wasn't Dad. I want to mention something briefly. I work a full-time job. I'm a father of 2 wild children, and I enjoy making these YouTube videos and podcast episodes for you as regularly as I can. I need a lot of focus in a lot of different parts of my life. That's why I've chosen to partner with Magic Mind. Now, I've used Magic Mind before in the past, and I want you to experience the same kind of focus, sharpness, productivity, and overall creativity that's demanded of us in every different aspect of our lives. Magic Mind uses natural ingredients like ashwagandha, turmeric, and lion's mane to propel me and you into a flow state where we can do our best work. Magic Mind has a one-time deal for you that's only accessible through the unique link that's provided in the description of this episode. You can subscribe and try the shots for free, only paying the shipping for the trial 3 bottles pack. And if you'd like to, you can cancel your subscription at any time to not get charged after 1 month. The website is magicmind.com/ScaryStoriesTrial, and the code that you'll want to put in to unlock your free sample trial is Scary Stories Trial. That link and that code is in the description of this episode right now. Biggest glitch I've ever experienced. I've been dying to find a good place to share this story, as it will forever be the weirdest thing to happen to me. My dad and I like to go geocaching. If you're not familiar, geocaches are small containers hidden in public areas, usually with a logbook and sometimes small trinkets inside. You upload the GPS coordinates to a website with some information about the cache, and then people will look for them, sign the logbook, and maybe trade out trinkets. There's an app now that adds some functionality with the ability to add photos, notes, hints, that kind of thing. We go to look for a specific cache one day, and we look everywhere, but we can't find it. It's frustrating, but it happens. We go back a week or 2 later, still can't find it. It's been marked as found semi-recently. Otherwise, we would just assume it had gone missing, which does happen sometimes. We finally give up and go elsewhere to find a couple of other caches. A couple weeks later, we're out caching and decided to go back to try one more time. I checked the app and see it was found since the last time we tried. We look around for a long time. We even use a hint that was left by the most recent finder, and we finally find it. I pull out my pen to mark the log, and when I unfurl it, the world stops for a moment because I see my dad's and my names written at the very end of the log in my handwriting. I call my dad over and we're looking at it together. We're both confused and very freaked out. I take a look again at the app and I realize that the last find was from our account. And the hint that we followed to find it this time was the one that we had left. It's been years, and we still talk about it some. It's one of those things where no matter how many people I tell this story to, I don't know, I kind of assume people just don't believe me because it's just so weird and it's such an obvious merging of timelines. So, it's nice to talk to my dad about it because I know he 100% believes me. I think we looked at the dates and our first find was on the date that we had last looked for it prior to the second find. But we both definitely would not have forgotten finding it because it had been driving us crazy, wondering where in the heck it was. Honestly, I'm not sure why we didn't just chalk it up to a cache that had gone missing. We both just couldn't stop thinking about it for some reason. I also don't know how I didn't notice the username from the recent find and hint that was our username until after we found the cache. It was just so weird overall, but it definitely makes for a great story. I met a teen that I work with when he should have been around 5 years old, and he knew me. So, a bit of a backstory. I'm a boarding school counselor. I work with teens around the age of 16 and have been working at it for 3 years now. Around 10 years back, I was about 20. I lived in the same city, not too far from the boarding school. One day, as I was working in retail, this kind of emo-looking teen walks in and instantly recognizes me. He called out my name, said something along the lines of, "Oh my God, Liz, I didn't know you work here." Now, I'm a person who has really good facial recognition, even though I'm terrible with names, but I had no idea who this kid was, so I just told him he must have gotten it wrong. He initially laughed like I was playing a joke on him and said something like, "Yeah, right, it's me, Johnny. Do you have amnesia or something?" In a way that kind of felt like he was really familiar with me. But when he realized that I was being serious, he got so disappointed and looked actually hurt. Like there was no way I couldn't know him, but didn't insist, and I just got what he came for, and then he left. It really stuck with me for years because I felt so bad that I didn't recognize this kid that seemed really happy to see me and even knew my name. I was also sure I'd see him again since most people coming to the shop there are locals, and wanted to ask him where he thought he knew me from when I saw him next, but I never did. It just struck me as really odd. A few weeks back, one of the kids had to leave boarding school since his family decided to move abroad. And since this is a very high-demand boarding school, some days later, a new kid joined our group instead of him. Lo and behold, it's Johnny. Same kind of emo look, same name, same way of talking. I know it sounds like something years could distort, but I have no doubt it's the same kid. I remembered his name and looks since I wondered about it every once in a while since then. This, however, shouldn't be possible since he would be around 10 years ago. We also grew really close really fast since we have a very similar background. I'm honestly just waiting for the day he comes back to school and says he saw me working in the store nearby. I'll let you all know if he does. Friend glitch. I messaged a former friend on LinkedIn to reconnect with her today, and she messaged back asking who I was. I explained that we used to chat at Dalplex during our mutual work break times. I was one of the IT guys there, and she was a student worker there. She told me that she went to Dalhousie University and worked at Dalplex in 1994, not in 2014. She stopped short of calling me a stalker, especially when I asked her about her then boyfriend, who she had broken up with publicly and dramatically, to the point that she got sent home from work that day. Now, she's been married to him for 15 years. I'm sitting in my office, not sure what to make of this. I'm 99% sure this is the same person that I worked alongside with for nearly 3 years, from 2012 to 2015. We would sit and chat during break times, where she would vent about her boyfriend and I would sit and listen when she was the only person at Dalplex to talk to me that didn't have to do with IT issues. Nothing dramatic, just that I knew this person from working with them and their boyfriend at the time. It just strikes me as being odd that they would respond this way. I checked her LinkedIn and it listed her graduating from Dalhousie University in 1995. I think I might be losing my mind. I don't know what to say. I'm kind of having a mild freak out and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to even think. 2 days ago, I wrote a letter to somebody, so I grabbed a notebook from my nightstand. I know it was this notebook in particular because on the very first page there was a journal entry from when I had briefly attempted to write in journals. I remember reading the journal entry and then turning to the next page and writing what I needed to. When I finished, I skimmed through the rest of the notebook and I found a few pages of comic strips that I had drawn from previous years and I had almost forgotten about. I ripped the page out that I needed. I still have it and have already checked the back of it, and continued on. Today, I decided to tidy up my room and I saw the notebook. First page still has the same journal entry, except now, the pages with the comic strips have disappeared. I know I didn't rip them out for any reason. I've looked through every single page of this notebook, front to back, and they're nowhere to be found. I've even checked other notebooks that I have stashed away in my closet just in case, and they're not there either. It's like they've just vanished. I feel like I'm actually losing my mind. I know that I saw them in that specific notebook just a few days ago, but now they've just disappeared. Hey, one thing about journaling is I think it actually works. I spent 10 minutes journaling for the first time ever, maybe a year ago, and I learned a lot about myself in just that 10 minutes. It's kind of an unlock. Try it if you don't already do it. An antique store took my phone. A year or so, I visited an antique store in my neighborhood that I frequented relatively often. I use the word antique loosely, as this particular store was ran by a family that owned the building they were in and had a habit of purchasing people's estates sight unseen, so you can imagine how packed this place is. This store is near impossible to navigate, as they have piles and piles of disorganized merchandise that's similarly set up to the antique shop episode of Nathan For You. This store was also known to service a large portion of my city's local theaters for things like costumes and props. I can't stress enough that this place is filled to the brim with products that have been sitting for well over 20 years. I'm with my husband, looking through a bin of old maps on one side of their basement. I do a quick look around the general area that I'm standing near, as this basement has incredibly low ceilings that my husband is too tall to maneuver comfortably through, and a maze of shelves of miscellaneous metalware, accented by a back wall that's lined with Easter bunny costumes that were just truly terrifying. Ultimately, that discouraged me from looking any further into the basement. We leave the basement, and I'm looking around at random things on the upper level, and I go to pull my phone out to take a picture of something, but my phone isn't in my pocket. I begin to retrace my steps as I realize this is probably the worst place to lose my phone. I return to the basement with the creepy costumes and I retrace my steps there. The area I was in was maybe 20 square feet, but this basement expands throughout what is essentially a quarter of a city block under the building. I ask my husband to call me, but my phone's on vibrate, and whatever little sound is being produced is silenced by the insane amount of costumes and fabric down there. I expand my search in the basement with my husband continuing to call me, stepping over old milk jugs, rotary telephones. Think of any obsolete technology and it was down there, and I was stepping over it. I eventually found my phone sitting on a high shelf towards the back of the room, which was an area that I hadn't initially visited and was difficult to get to, even on a shelf where the items on top weren't exactly visible. I don't know how it got there, but it certainly wasn't by me or by my husband that put it there, as we were both together the entire time. I left with the willies, and I haven't been back since. Mysterious stalker. I want to start by saying that I consider myself a very observant person. I mean, I'm horrible with names, but I will remember a face. This is what makes me confident enough to share this story. My wife and I went to Louisiana for her best friend's wedding. It was a long trip from where we lived in the upper Midwest, but it was worth it. Her friend's family made us feel so welcome, like we were honestly a part of their family. We did the normal wedding stuff, rehearsals and stuff like that, but we also got to hang out just in general. After the rehearsal, the wedding party and both the bride and groom's families went out to eat at this Mexican restaurant. This was a massive party though, so my social battery was dying pretty quickly. I told my wife that I needed to go to the bathroom, which I genuinely did, but it was also an excuse to get a quick recharge. Now, this is where it gets unsettling. I did my business, started washing my hands, and that's when this man walked in. I'll never forget how he looked. He was a heavy-set Caucasian dude. He had a close-cropped beard and wore an extremely loud and almost ridiculous cowboy outfit. He came in smiling at me and washing his hands. We exchanged greetings like usual, and then he complimented my shirt. It was a Spider-Man No Way Home shirt. I thanked him, and then he said he loves superheroes too, and that he had the full collection of Christopher Reeve's Superman films at his house. I thought it was a normal thing to boast about, but then it hit me that out of all the superhero movies that he could have chosen, he picked my favorite Superman, Christopher Reeves. I don't know. I brushed it off as a coincidence and we said goodbye. We both walked out with him behind me. And as I was walking back to my seat, I suddenly heard the same dude, clear as day, say my name out loud. I spun around since he was right behind me, but he was gone. I looked around and he was nowhere to be seen. It genuinely freaked me out because I never even mentioned my name to him, and it was almost impossible for him to leave the restaurant that quickly. I told my wife and she chalked it up to coincidence. The rest of the wedding planning went well, but then the reception came around. I was having an absolute blast. Not drinking a thing, mind you. I was underage at the time. When I spotted this dude, was bald everywhere except for his eyebrows, just staring at me. I stared back at him, and considering my last experience, I started making my way towards him. I made it to where he was, but then he was gone. I looked everywhere around the party, accounted for every face, and nobody matched. I had chills for a while before trying to shake it off and enjoy the party. Well, let's fast forward 3 months later, and my wife and I moved down to the south of the Carolinas. We were looking for a place since we were staying with my parents, so we checked out a town that some friends were living at. This town is about 3 hours from my parents, and while out to eat with them, I went to the bathroom again. As soon as I was done in the stall, I turned the corner of the stall to the sink, and I almost ran into somebody. I looked up, and it was the same man from Louisiana. He wasn't wearing a cowboy outfit, nor did he say anything. He just smiled at me, and it wasn't a genuine smile. He only smiled in his mouth. The rest of his face was not smiling. I stood there, shocked, and I looked at this other dude in the bathroom. That's when I realized the other stall was open. He didn't need to wait for my stall. The guy could have just walked into the other stall, but he still stood there, smiling at me. I went back to my seat and I told my wife, in which she got chills just from hearing it. Our seats were in front of the bathroom, so I watched intently to see if he would come out so that I could show him to her. But he never did. I rushed back into the bathroom to see if he was still in there, but every stall was empty. I'm still freaked out by this. I mean, it almost seems impossible for someone to follow us that much, literally across states. If anything develops, I'll be sure to include an update. I don't know who's following me, or if they have good intentions, or not. I shopped in a place that doesn't exist. My mom had this Pandora bracelet that she adored. My dad, my sister, her mom, and some friends all got her charms for it, and she would also get some for herself. She never took that bracelet off. Around a year ago, I was looking for a shop that sells those charms for the bracelet around where I lived, so I could also get one for her birthday. I was new to the neighborhood since I just finished my BA degree and moved out of the dorms to my own apartment. So, I was really happy to find a jewelry shop that sold them a few streets away from my new place. I distinctly remember the jeweler there. She was this kind lady, looked to be around my mom's age, dressed in a bit of an old-fashioned way. Anyway, I got her a charm saying "Best Mom," and she really loved it. Fast forward to this year, my mom passed away this January. It was unexpected and painful, but that's a topic for another post. The only thing I asked my dad and sister to let me keep was her bracelet, and they agreed happily. Around a month ago, one of the charms broke. Now, if you know about Pandora bracelets, You know that usually shops that sell their charms also have a means to fix them. So, I figured I'd go back to that shop to get it fixed. I went to the exact same address, which I'm sure of because I had a screenshot of the location in Google Maps. But there was no shop. In fact, there were only residential buildings. And I clearly remember a year ago it was a commercial building that had maybe 4 or 5 shops. That in itself was weird. But I figured maybe somehow in a year they changed the place or took down the commercial building. But no. I asked my landlady about it, and she's been living in this neighborhood for around 20 years, and she's never heard about such a place. I also asked some friends that live close to me, and no one has any idea what I'm talking about. Google has no answers, but that best mom charm is still there, and I really don't know what to make of it. Either the gnomes are messing with my house, or the simulation is breaking down. This may not be the most shocking story ever, but things keep going missing for a while and inexplicably showing up where we know we've looked for them before. I had a stick of deodorant that I always keep on my desk in my bedroom. I had extras in the bathroom because I always order them online 4 at a time, but when it went missing out of nowhere, I looked all around the desk, on the floor, and in the drawers of my desk several times, thinking maybe I just put it there by mistake. I even asked my girlfriend, who by the way is amazing at knowing where things are and finding things, if she knew where it was, and she looked all over for it too, including the desk drawers, and couldn't find it, and she gave up. About a week later, I go into my top desk drawer looking for something else entirely, and there it is, sitting right at the forefront of the drawer. Like, you couldn't possibly have missed it before if it had been there when we were looking for it. I'm now handing the phone over to my girlfriend to tell a story of a similar occurrence that happened to her. I got into an accident back in December, which wasn't my fault, and I couldn't get the work done until the end of January. So, January comes and I take my car key off of my keychain and drop off my vehicle. I get it back like 2 weeks later and forgot to put the key back on the keychain. Fast forward another week or so, I come home from picking up the kids and I put the key on the kitchen table. I get up the next morning and it's gone. I ask my boyfriend and the kids if they moved it, but no one had. I thought that maybe the youngest took them because he loves playing with keys, but still couldn't find it. So, I resort to using my spare. For a month and a half, there was no sign of that key. And then, one day, I'm standing outside and my car goes beep beep, like I had hit the fob, but that key that had the buttons on it has been missing this whole time. Then, the mailman walks up and asks, "Whose van is that?" And I tell him it's mine, and he hands me my key and tells me that it was on the next street over. The only time that I'm on that street is when I'm driving, so I don't know how it could have ended up there. OP is back now. These are just a couple of examples of many, as these are the most recent and most mysterious. And most of the occurrences happened to her, not me. But I'm convinced at this point that the simulation is really breaking down. What do you guys think? Who did I see? Last night, my husband and I went outside to have a cigarette before bed. We both keep our cigarettes in our vehicles since we don't smoke in the house. I walked to my car to grab my cigarettes and was going to grab one for my husband. When I looked up, I saw him walking towards his truck, so I figured, never mind, I'll just grab one for me, since he's probably grabbing one for himself out of his truck. For reference, we have a large driveway. I usually park closest to the house, and he parks sort of on the side, so his truck is about 20 feet away from my car. As soon as I looked down to put the extra cigarette back in my pack, my husband, who is now somehow right behind me, asks me for one of mine, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. I asked him how he got behind me so quick, since I literally just saw him at his truck. He told me he didn't go to his truck. He went to the mailbox, even holding mail in his hand, but the mailbox is in the opposite direction. I was positive that he was messing with me and kept asking if he was joking. He said no. He walked to the mailbox and back, checked the cameras. I did check the cameras, but I was still convinced that he was somehow messing with me. He never went to his truck. He went to the mailbox and then walked straight to me. Nobody was near the truck at all. But I swear, if it wasn't my husband at his truck, who did I see? I saw my sister at a parade while my actual sister was right next to me. This freaks me out, and at the time of writing this is my only real glitch in the Matrix experience. For context, this happened in 2010/2011 when I was 18 and my sister was maybe 13 or 14. Our city's baseball team had won the World Series that year, and my family went down to the celebratory parade. We arrived downtown about 15 minutes before the parade began, and we found a decent spot to stand, right up front. Me, being an avid people watcher, began scanning the sea of people standing on the other side of the street. That's when I noticed a girl my sister's age standing almost directly across from my sister, and I became fixated on her. She was turned talking to her family, but when she turned back to face the street, I couldn't believe my eyes. She looked identical to my little sister, who was standing right next to me. And I don't mean just like your typical doppelganger. My sister is a skinny, white, blonde girl, so we've seen other girls who look like her over the years, but this was different. They were like mirror images of each other. She even had on the same glasses and t-shirt and same color jeans too. The only difference was that this other girl's hair was pushed back, and my sister always had her hair hanging in her face at that age. I was speechless for a minute. But then I got the attention of my parents and I said, "That girl over there looks exactly like Brenna." They looked, and I could see that they were also a bit taken aback by just how much they looked alike, and they agreed with me and pointed her out to my sister. As soon as my sister noticed her, the other girl across the street noticed her at the same time, and I just watched them both stare at each other for a solid minute. At this point, we were all silent and just looking at this girl, looking at my sister. The other girl's parents notice us staring, then notice my sister, and even though they didn't acknowledge us, I could tell they were thinking the same things that we were. I could tell they noticed the resemblance and were pretty weirded out. I had my digital camera with me, and I discreetly zoomed in on her and even took a picture because I knew people wouldn't believe us when I told them. The zoomed in picture was even freakier. It looked like I had just taken a photo of my actual sister. The parade started not long after, so we turned our attention to that for the moment. And when I looked back across the street just a few minutes later, the girl and her family were gone. We never saw them again. The other weird part of the story, which is the reason why I'm sharing it, is that I made a Facebook photo album that evening with all the pictures that I took from the parade, including the picture of my sister's doppelganger, with a caption that said something like, "You may think this is Brenna, but it's not. Freaky, right?" I recall receiving many comments from people who were stunned at the resemblance. A few years later, I was telling a friend about it and went to the Facebook album to show them, but the photo was gone. All of the other photos from that day were still there, except for the one of that girl. I guess Facebook could have removed it for some reason, but it didn't make sense why just that photo would have been removed. Anyway, I still vividly remember how weirded out and uneasy my sister and I were after that experience. Somebody left a comment asking if the OP still has that device and if she could share the photo, but unfortunately, OP says she's lost the camera and the memory card ages ago. This one remains a mystery. Duplicating blanket. This is a rather odd and detailed story that happened recently. When I was a teenager, over a decade ago, my girlfriend at the time gifted me an M&M blanket for my birthday. I used the blanket as one normally would for a time, and after splitting up with the girl eventually, the blanket came to live in the back seat of my first car. My dog would sleep on the blanket in the back seat during rides. A few years later, my dog got really ill and had to be put down, so we took him to the vet in the blanket and we kept him wrapped in it after passing. I was given the blanket back by the vet tech, and I have kept it in the back seat to this day due to the simple sentimental value. My time of the glitch. I'd long moved out of the family house and the blanket remained on the back seat of my now third car. When visiting my parents, my mother told me she had found something of mine when decluttering the loft/attic. She then gave me the dusty M&M blanket and brought up that it was the one my ex got for me and the one that we took Maxie to the vet in. She found it by accident when decluttering and thought that she should give it to me. I told her it couldn't be, as it was still in my back seat. She laughed and didn't quite believe me, so I showed her. We both had no idea what to say or how this could even come to be. The blankets are identical, even down to the faded tag. My parents never bought an M&M blanket, and nobody ever gifted me a second one. To this day, it still weirds me out. I still have the original blanket, and the other one is at my parents'. I'm convinced that this is some conjurer-level magic. Really obscure movie or a glitch? This has been driving me nuts for a week, and I wanted to share, hoping I could find the answer or some kind of explanation. My wife and I both experienced this, so please help us out. It's a very odd story, so bear with me. My wife and I were traveling for a family reunion last weekend. We both had to work, so we woke up around 4:30 to make the 3-hour drive. After a normal workday, a family gathering, and a few drinks with my older brother, we walked back to the hotel. It was almost 1 a.m. Now keep in mind, we'd been awake for over 20 hours and were slightly delusional. As we winded down for bed, I was flipping through the channels and ended on HBO. My wife was doing her skincare routine, so I wasn't really paying attention to the movie or show that was playing. I was browsing Reddit for about 15 to maybe 20 minutes on my phone until she joined me in bed. She asked what I was watching, and I told her I had no idea. I hadn't been paying any attention. The details of the scene are shaky and super weird. The scene was 2 mid to late 20s white guys that I didn't recognize, who were seemingly looking for a lost trinket of some kind in what looked to be in a New York City apartment setting. They were talking to a hamster who said something to the effect of, "You should check with my friends in the mouse hole in the other room, but I should warn you, it's turned into a CVS pharmacy." The guy then goes into the other room, puts his hand in the mouse hole as if his hand was a tiny human, and asks the hamster CVS workers if anyone's seen the missing trinket, as if this was just normal behavior. The hamsters mentioned that another hamster came in looking for his lost sunglasses and that they gave them to him. The guy asks to describe the glasses, and the hamster described the trinket. The last thing in the scene I remember was the hamster saying something like, "Yeah, no, he came in and asked if anyone had seen his sunglasses. I brought over the only thing in the lost and found and asked if it was his, and he said, 'Yep, those are my sunglasses,' and then he left." We both looked at each other like, "What the F?" and then went to sleep. The next morning, we talked about what we had seen the night before and confirmed that we both watched the same thing. I can't find anything anywhere that even resembles this scene, and I sound crazy when I ask if anyone has seen anything like this. The fact that it was a shared experience rules out that I was dreaming or suffering carbon monoxide poisoning. But what do you think? Did we slip into an alternate reality? Or did we just have the same hallucination? This was solved pretty quickly. It wasn't a shared hallucination. It wasn't an alternate reality. What it was is Julio Torres' new series called Phantasmus. Somebody in the comments lent their knowledge to the situation. This one is solved. I found candy in my drawer from a store that closed 5 years ago. When I was 6 or 7, I used to go to this local candy store all the time. They sold these candy sticks that they packaged in thin paper with orange and white striped bags. Eventually, I moved out of that area, and the store closed its doors for good just 5 years ago. Tonight, I woke up, and as always, I went to my desk. I opened my drawer to get some pencils, but as I opened it, I was so bewildered. In my drawer that I've had every day of my life for years, there was an orange and white striped paper bag with those exact same candy sticks inside. I asked my dad and my brother whether they put anything in my drawer, but they denied it. Nobody came around the house in the past month either. There's no way that anybody could have put these in my drawer. It's like they just appeared out of thin air. And I use that drawer every single day, and I know that I didn't put anything in there either. There's no way that something could have slipped in my drawer without me noticing. But you know what especially creeps me out is the fact that the store that sold them closed 5 years ago. I don't even get how anyone could have obtained these in the first place. If anyone has any explanation for this, please let me know, because I'm still really confused. Reappearing vase. This happened to me 3 days ago. I'm still in shock and disbelief, and to be honest, I'm a little scared. I've lived in my current home for just 1 year as of this week. When I moved in, I had a small vase with fake thistle and heather in it. I'd owned the vase for many years previous to this, and it had survived 3 house moves so far. The vase has lived in various places in the new house since we've moved in. Either on my fireplace, on my side table, or in the hallway. It moved out of the hallway permanently as the windowsill it was on had a leak over winter and there was nowhere else for it to go in the hall. My 3-year-old smashed said vase around 6 months ago when she knocked it off the fireplace, and myself and my 2 eldest daughters laughed at the Hubba Bubba chewing gum wrappers that they had stashed in there so many years previously. I actually remember saying out loud, I've had this vase since our first address. I'm so sad. Circle round to this week. My 3-year-old was playing a peekaboo game on the porch with me and the older girls. To hide from her behind the door, we had to squish up against the wall. My oldest daughter parked her bottom on a small window ledge in the hallway. It's about 16 centimeters wide and about 15 centimeters deep, if that. Nothing was there. I came out of the lounge less than half an hour later to go upstairs, and there, sitting on the windowsill, was the vase, intact and on the edge of the sill. Instantly, I recoiled and shouted, "Oh my God, what is that doing there?" I was dumbfounded and scared by the actual unknownness of it reappearing. All 4 kids came to the stairway/hallway thinking I'd seen a spider or something. But upon seeing the vase, my oldest said, "How? Mom, we literally sat there half an hour ago and that was a smashed vase. We even got to see everything that we had been putting in there." I have no idea how it ended up back here. I do have small psychic tendencies, like thoughts that manifest days later, knowing when people are gonna pass, stuff like that. But this has just thrown my head. To stop the kids from worrying, I said, right, let's just Google the meaning of the flowers, as it has to be a sign. Sure enough, if you Google the flowers, they actually are said to bring protection. This isn't the only glitch that I've ever experienced in this house either. Here's another quick one. I was cooking a cottage pie and opened the lid on the Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce. It spun, hit me and the stovetop, but never hit the ground. My kitchen has a 2x2 meter floor space, and there are no gaps in the kickboards or under the washer or oven that's big enough for this bottle to fall through. I've never found the lid to the bottle. I scoured the floor on my hands and knees, but to no avail. I still have no logical explanation for either incident. I didn't realize it was a glitch. Only recently have I found myself really seeking information about glitches in the Matrix. With the things I'm reading, I'm just realizing now how much it's apparent in my own life. I wrote everything off as it happened as just a thing or a one-off or even a lucky mistake sometimes. like instances where additional AirPods just pop up around my house, lost objects, found duplicates, infrastructure suddenly being somewhere that it wasn't before. One thing that I wanted to mention though is this one memory/glitch that has stuck with me. I had this downstairs neighbor who was very distinct in appearance and, let's just say, striking in her looks, so it was an obvious identification in these two instances. Well, I looked out my window on my way to take out the trash, and I saw her crossing the street to go to check the mail. But when I was approaching the trash, she was walking back from the trash. And these are in two different locations of our apartment complex, and there's no way that within that 15 seconds she could have crossed back over and been coming from a different location. I brushed it off back then as, wow, she must have really been in a hurry to throw something out after checking the mail. What could have made her go that fast? But, looking back, it's not even possible for her to do that. Not in the slightest. So, after researching experiences with glitches, it dawned on me that this was one of them. Bustling cafe deserted and closed in seconds. This happened a few weeks ago in LA. I was walking with my friend to my car to drop something off. On the way, we passed a busy upscale cafe with multiple people sitting outdoors at tables with their food and their drinks. There was a small line inside waiting to order. It was so busy, I made a mental note to make sure to check it out sometime. This coffee shop was only half a block from my car and on the same street. I get to my car, I put our things in there, and we immediately walked back towards the cafe. But this time, the cafe was empty and closed. The outdoor tables and chairs were no longer there. Inside was dark and empty. I saw one person inside wiping the counter, but that was it. It was so shocking that I had to stop and stare at the cafe. I mean, less than 60 seconds ago, it was open and full of people. My friend noticed me freeze up and asked me what was going on, and I explained to them what I saw. They just shrugged and said they didn't really notice the cafe at all as we walked past it the first time. Thinking about it today still makes me shudder a bit. I don't know, it kind of feels like I seamlessly shifted into a new reality. My stuff is disappearing into the floor. My room is very clean, and with not much very space for an object to go between or underneath anything. It has carpet, so it can't slide underneath anything if I drop it. I was eating a bowl of cereal at my desk, and when I was done, I put my bowl and spoon at the back of my desk next to my monitor. A few minutes later, I accidentally kicked my desk, and the bowl and the spoon fell off the back onto the floor, and I heard them clank against each other when they landed, with the bowl facing down and sounding like the spoon was underneath it. A second later, I go to pick them up and put them in the kitchen, but the spoon is gone. It's not underneath anything, and it's not blending into the carpet or anything like that. It's been a full day, and I've moved furniture to find it, and it's just not here. It's a very unique spoon too, and it doesn't look like any other one that I have, so I've always just used it for cereal. But now it's gone. I've had this same thing happen before with a water bottle and a $20 bill that I put in my pocket and changed my shirt, and then it was gone. It wasn't on the floor or in the shirt, and it's been months since then, and I still never found it. This happened in the bathroom too, with nothing for it to go under whatsoever. The water bottle fell off my bedside table away from me, so I couldn't see where it landed, but I did hear it hit the ground. And when I got up to grab it, there was nothing there at all. It's also just gone after months of searching. Duplicated jacket. My sister and I fought over this one jacket when we were teenagers. I have no idea who owned it first, but it went back and forth between us over the years, and we're in our early 30s now, and it became incredibly worn, thin, and faded. Still wearable, but definitely just for bumming around the house in. About 3 years ago, my sister had had possession of it for a long time, and I hadn't seen or thought about it for at least a couple of years when I popped around to see a mutual friend of ours. As I was leaving their house, they handed me the jacket to give back to my sister, saying that she'd left it there. I was surprised that it was still floating around and touched by the nostalgia of having it in my possession again. Obviously, the next time I saw my sister, I wore it as a bit of a joke, like, "Hey, like my jacket?" But this is where it got weird. She went into her wardrobe and pulled out the exact same jacket. Worn, thin, and faded in exactly the same ways. We were both amazed and honestly a little freaked out. It's completely unexplainable. I've had several glitch in the Matrix moments, but this one is my favorite because the jackets and our shared experience sort of serve as this hard evidence. Somebody in the comments said the jacket just got tired of you two fighting, so it duplicated itself. Unexplainable white glowing orb underneath bed covers. Last night, my boyfriend and I were listening to a podcast in my bed via screencast. My phone was off while connected, and thus neither my phone nor the TV was emitting any light. We were just laying in the dark, listening, when I went to search for my phone under the covers and couldn't find it. My boyfriend and I lifted up the covers to look for it when I thought my boyfriend has turned his phone flashlight to help me see in the dark. It was concentrated light that was directed straight under the covers. It wasn't like it was light coming from outside and somehow making its way under my thick comforter. It lasted for maybe 2 seconds until I moved the cover over a bit to dig deeper for my phone. I actually said thank you to him for turning on the flashlight, and I asked him to shine the light again, and he responded with confusion. I again repeated that the phone flashlight was helpful, and he pointed out that his phone was on the nightstand. I looked, and sure enough, his keys were on his phone next to his wallet, and I didn't even hear his keys jingle, so I know he hadn't moved his phone back within the 2 seconds that the confusion began. He's a very skeptical person, and he thought that I was messing with him. We eventually found my phone, and it was in a spot under the covers and away from the bed that my flashlight and screen couldn't possibly be accidentally turned on when searching. The covers were completely covering the part of the bed where my phone was found. The screen was dark when I found it, so it couldn't have been the screen activating the TV somehow, and again, it was just so concentrated that it seemed like it just existed right under the covers, not like it was anything coming from my room or the street. We live in Boston, and it's really humid here since it's summer, and as one with lots of experience with bed static, it wasn't anything like that either. It was a steady, constant glow that seemed like the source was coming from behind my shoulder and lighting up the area directly in front of me. Even though my boyfriend and I were completely under the covers at this point while we searched. I have zero idea what this could have been, and my boyfriend, the skeptic, has zero ideas either. Some Google searches showed ball lightning as a possibility, but there was no distinct smell after the light appeared. I'm truly stumped and really a bit spooked, so if anybody has any thoughts, I'd really appreciate hearing them. Matrix cat. Basically, just like the movie. This was 10 years ago in a tiny house that my husband and I were renting. We had a tiny hallway with 2 doorways facing each other. The left doorway led to our bedroom, and to the right was our kitchen entrance, and directly ahead, in the middle, was the bathroom. I remember laying on the carpet in the living room, looking into the hallway to make sure that we put the baby gate up between the living room and the hallway so that our toddler wouldn't crawl into the kitchen. I watched as our one and only cat walked from our bedroom into the kitchen. I kept laying there because I was talking through the door at my husband, who was in the bathroom directly in front of me. About 5 seconds later, our cat walked again from our bedroom to our kitchen, directly across my path, which would have been physically impossible because our cat should have still been in the kitchen and there was no other way out. It was a super old house and the windows didn't really open, so I guess theoretically if we did leave a bedroom window open and the kitchen window open, she could have run a giant fast circuit outside of our house back into our bedroom window, but all the windows except for one were painted shut. I've never experienced anything like that again, so who knows? Maybe cats are just like that. Spoiler alert, cats really are just like that. Walking towards work and getting farther away somehow. This is a bit of a part 2 to a previous story, but let me catch you up. I wrote a post about how I went to work and somehow was going farther and farther away, and my GPS showed missing location. Some people suggested that I go back and try to find the place. Well, here's an update on my findings. I went looking for that place. I've walked all over that area of town and nothing. I couldn't even find that a place like that ever existed. I asked local gardeners about this place and walked around for hours. I asked local shop workers. No one has even come across a place like the one that I was at. Since the town in question is my wife's hometown and not mine, I just thought, okay, I got lost. It was weird, but I went on living. But it's been in the back of my mind that something is just off. I came back to right here because I noticed weird little things, and also larger things even. I started to suspect that I shifted dimensions and never got back to my original dimension. The majority of things that I noticed are dismissible, especially because either I forgot or I've had loads of mini glitches happen in the meantime. As the saying goes, the devil is in the details. My timeline is completely off. I came back to London after being away for 5 years. My family says I've been away for 4 years. My original post was 3 years ago, but it said that I uploaded it 1 year ago, which is also not possible because I worked at least a year at the school that I was at when I first wrote the post. My wife is certain that we lived at her hometown for 2 years, but I remember it being 3 years. I didn't really give that too much thought. Maybe I'm one of those guys that just messes up dates, right? I mean, makes sense. But when I got back to London, where I grew up, is when I noticed something was really different. I went out to do errands, walked up towards the main high road, and I noticed a few shops. I thought, okay, fair enough, new shops. It happens when you've been away. But it wasn't that. It was looking at the little different things. I started to look for some shops and couldn't find them. In my head, I thought I'm gonna have to learn my local area all over again. I know it's been some time and places come and go, which is fine, but I can't find the actual location of key places, like post offices. Like there are 2 missing post offices, like the entire building is gone. The building that I looked for wasn't ever there. I went to Google to look up the history, and I even asked some locals if there was ever a post office building there. What rattled me the most, and this is what made me feel so, unsettled, was the security guard at the library. He told me that there was one there, but it was 10 years ago. Other things that I noticed was that the metal band I was in doesn't have an album anymore. The guys I spoke with from the band also have a different timeline than I do. Some of my stuff is different, like certainly. Brand design not existing, for example. There were a pair of Vans shoes that I used to own 3 pairs of, but now I can't find them. In fact, I looked online to buy them again, and they say that they never existed. I searched all over my family's storage for them, and they weren't anywhere. Oddly enough, though, I did find my mom's clothes where the shoes were supposed to be. I got to my family home to set up my bed and looked at the sofa with some confusion, and I asked if there was upholstery redone on the sofa bed. My mom just laughed like I was pulling her leg. But I know that we used to have pineapples on that sofa, and now there's no pineapples. And this is a sofa that my family's had since I was 15 years old. When I asked about them, my mom looked at me like I was pulling her leg again, because the sofa is white now. And what's more unsettling is, as my mom says, it's always been white. The local Greasy Spoon cafe that I ate at apparently wasn't remembered, as if it never existed, and has been a Thai restaurant for ages. Later that same day, I went to grab my guitar and just mess around, and I noticed that one of my broken guitars I had fixed on the neck had a line over from the glue. Well, there's no sign of that guitar ever being broken. One of my pedals was a tube screamer, which, if you know what that is, it's this bright green foot pedal. Now, it's orange. Even my old room at my parents' house is bigger than I remember. I thought it was going crazy, so I measured it, and it was an extra 1 meter in size than I remember. All this, until now, sounds like I've just been away and maybe misremembering stuff, but frankly, I'm even considering that I'm a little confused too. Or maybe I just never paid that much attention. There's other stuff too that I noticed, like certain foods tasting different, and gates in different places. Well, either way, I know someone's gonna be skeptical, and I'm really just writing this so that I can process it, and it's really weird for me too. Reappearing sliders. This was a few years ago now, when I was living with my best friend at university. We were in her room and wanted to go to the shops, so she starts looking for her sliders. We're looking around the room and we can't find them anywhere. They're not in the bathroom or under the bed, so we decide to look in my room. We go in there and look around, and nothing. So she decides just to put on her trainers and we make our way back to her room. As soon as we open the door, we stop dead in our tracks because right in the middle of the floor were her sliders, neatly placed together. They weren't against the wall or under the bed or anywhere else that we could have missed. It was as if they'd been placed there in the 2 minutes that we were away in my room. If I hadn't been there to see it myself, I honestly wouldn't believe it. I mean, we're both messy, and she had ADHD blindness where something could be staring you in the face and you don't see it. But we both saw these sliders clear as day, and it's not like our rooms were that big either. They were tiny dorm rooms. We still talk about it, and we're still just as freaked out. My pans vanished and then reappeared. This just happened. I've been in my apartment today trying to reorganize all of my crafting stuff. I'm a multimedia crafter and I do a little bit of everything. I just moved into this apartment 7 months ago, and I'd ordered a couch a couple of days ago, and it'll be here next week. So, in an effort to reorganize and make room, I decided to put some of my stuff in a storage unit. I was looking for my pizza pans. I had a bunch of them that I bought from Dollar Tree, but I couldn't find them. I was positive that I put them in a box that was over in the corner that contained my record albums that I painted. I went to the box 3 times. Then I picked up the albums and flipped through all of them. I went up to my storage unit and looked in there, and they weren't there. This has been going on all day. Finally, in frustration, I came back downstairs. I stood in the middle of my living room and I spoke out loud, demanding God, the universe, and whatever spirits were around me to return the pizza pans immediately, because I was getting tired and frustrated. I went into the bedroom and I looked in the closet, knowing full well that they weren't there, and surprise, surprise, they weren't. I came back to the living room, went back to the corner with the box full of albums in them because I swear that's where I had put my pizza pans, and as I went to open the box again, I start to hear metal clanging around. I opened the box, and sitting in front of the albums and even on top of the albums were my pizza pans. It's not the first time this has happened to me, and I really do wish that I could understand the nature of our reality. I've got an interesting past life story up next. Listen to this. My ex-girlfriend was my mother in a past life. I'm in shock. I just learned that my ex-girlfriend, we were together for 5 years and even engaged, was my mother in a past life. I felt it intensely in my heart, in my entire being, and started to cry. Not too long ago, I posted here about recovering from immense grief from my mother's death in my most recent past life regression, and how it shook my system. No wonder that it hit me like a train wreck. Me, a 27-year-old female, and my ex-fiancée, a 28-year-old female, broke up in 2022. It was extremely painful for both of us. After 5 years of intense love, fighting, disagreements, ups and downs, and immense compassion and care for each other, my inner child has truly never felt more safe with anyone other than her. And now I think I know why. I was also wondering how I couldn't seem to let her go. 2 years have gone, and when she left me, I felt despair, grief, deeply wounded, and I did not get better with time. I've never been so scared to be alone in my whole life. It was like my whole safety net collapsed and I felt naked and stranded. I became severely depressed after our breakup. I cried, sobbed, screamed. I even wrote music about her. It literally felt as if she had died, or it might as well have died when she left me. The grief was so intense, I couldn't handle it. My nervous system broke down. I simply existed as a shell of a human being, not understanding why, despite doing therapy, talking to my friends and family, that I never felt safe anymore. It wasn't until I started meditating in August of 2023, started my spiritual awakening, did some ketamine to get out of my depression, and started trauma healing and now healing past lives, that the grief is finally leaving my body. I finally healed, and I can almost not believe this. Somebody left a comment that says, "I can imagine how breaking up with someone who was your mother in the past could be so dysregulating and for such a long time." OP responds with, "It was." People commented all the time about how our relationship was so intense and somewhat codependent because we did everything together and we were everything to each other. After we broke up and then met up a couple of months later, she hugged me and said, "Hugging you feels like coming home, and that no one talks to me the way that you talk to me. Even though we find someone else, I will not stop loving you. No one can replace what we had. It was a different type of love." A red truck. I experience glitches from time to time. Last week, driving on the freeway, I was behind a red pickup truck in the middle of a 3-lane. They were going slower than the flow of traffic, so I passed on the left and then merged back into the middle lane a couple of car lengths ahead. I checked my mirrors, and the driver of the truck did a hand gesture like, "Come on." I figured some people just don't like being passed. About a mile later, that flow of traffic slowed down a bit. Traffic was passing in the left lane. I checked my mirrors, and the red truck was tailgating me. No big deal. I had to slow down because of traffic. A minute or so later, I checked my rearview mirror, and the red truck was still tailgating. They swerved to the empty right lane to pass me on the right. We were in a stretch of freeway with no exits, and this was the same length of freeway that I drive multiple times per week and have for years. Jersey barriers on the left with no shoulder, and a shoulder next to a residential wall on the right. I looked over, expecting to see the red truck maybe about to get flipped off. These things happen. But nothing. No cars in the right lane. There's a couple of cars in the left lane and a few cars in front of me, but there's no red truck behind me. I looked in all of my mirrors and then glanced around my blind spots. I looked through the mirrors to check the shoulder, like maybe they just pulled over or something. But the shoulder was empty of any vehicles. This red truck was just gone. It completely disappeared. And that really weirded me out. I don't know. What do you think happened? Hey, it's been a while since I've done like a true paranormal story, and I just wanted to sneak one in now. Don't be mad at me. A spirit spoke through me. I haven't told many people about this experience, but it seems like this would be a good place to share. This happened about 20 years ago when I was 14. My friend's mother was very into the paranormal world, and one night we, which was myself, my friend, her mom, and a few other friends, decided that we wanted to use their Ouija board. We turned off all the lights in the house, but lit a couple of candles on either side of the board, which we had sitting on their coffee table. We all sat in a circle while her mom told us a few rules about the board. Suddenly, my friend goes, "Let's do a seance." Her mom tells us to all join hands, and no matter what happens, do not break the circle. Her mom starts asking if there was anyone there with us, if any spirits would like to communicate with us, and things like that. A few minutes go by, and we hear a huge crashing sound come from my mom's room, followed by what sounds like people walking around in the bedroom. We all look at Laura, which is my friend's mom, and she yells out, "Hello?" Then another loud crash, and we hear someone say, "Shh." And then all of a sudden, my right side goes completely ice cold. Tears start streaming down my face. I have no idea why I'm crying, but I look at my friend's mom and say, "Everything will be all right, Laura." I lean in and I blow out the candle that was sitting in front of me. Laura gasps, starts crying, and then backs up from the table. My friend runs to turn on the light. She looks at me and she says, "Why did you say her name like that?" When I say Laura, I usually pronounce it as Laura, but when I was talking to her in the moment, I said Laura. I told my friend I wasn't sure why I had done any of that just now, but that it didn't feel like I was in control for any of it. Almost like someone else was steering. She then tells me that I said her mom's name exactly like her mom's ex, Dale, used to say her name. Her mom told us that Dale was extremely abusive and even tried to kill her towards the end of their relationship. Dale passed in a motorcycle accident 5 years prior. We were all so freaked out. At that point, my friend wanted to check on her bedroom where we heard the crashing sounds and the footsteps. When we opened her bedroom door, her mattress, box spring, and frame were thrown around the room, and her nightstand was knocked over. I still get chills when I think about that night. It's such a strange experience, and it definitely made me a believer. Teleporting Jeep. My husband and I were driving down an old 2-lane highway on our way to lunch today when I noticed a bright blue Jeep Wrangler driving in the opposite lane. It stuck out to me because it had a large array of rubber ducks lining the dashboard. I made a mental note of the quirkiness and went on with the drive. We got to the restaurant, and as we walked inside, my husband stops to comment on a car in the parking lot as we pass and says, "Look at all the ducks they have in there." And it was the same blue Jeep that I had seen on the way, but it had previously been driving along the highway from the direction away from the restaurant. There is absolutely no route from where they were headed that would have allowed that driver to beat us to the restaurant, park, and then exit the vehicle. The look on my face was really confusing to my husband, who missed the first sighting and had no idea why I was so shocked. Clouds turned off. It was leap day yesterday, and I felt unusually tired all day. I was taking my dog out to the garden in the evening, a little bit hurried because I needed to read to my kids for bedtime and then do something for work. When I walked out, I looked up at the dusky, dark, but not yet fully dark, and sort of cloudy sky, and I noticed toward the south, on the western side, a brighter group of spots in the sky. I thought they looked like 4 or 5 clouds that were lighter colored than everything else, but they weren't uniformly shaped, not like perfect circles or anything, so they didn't really look like spotlights to me. I really thought they were just clouds, and as I was looking at them, wondering why that might be, why a few clouds would still be glowing when the rest of the sky was getting dark, and how this group of clouds would be this shade of lightish blue, they disappeared. Like somebody just switched them off. I took a screenshot of my phone's date and time a minute or so after this happened just to record it for myself, and I later looked up the time of sunset. It had been 35 minutes before this incident. I don't know if maybe it could have been lights from shining somewhere in our city that someone suddenly turned off, and even if that was the case, I don't know, maybe it was lights from the airport, though it's hard to pinpoint the source of projected light. It seemed like a difficult angle to achieve from the airport, but not totally impossible. But after years of living quite close to the airport, I've never seen anything like that before, and I've looked up at the sky a lot. These clouds weren't moving around like searchlights usually would be if there were a special event. They were all in the same area of the sky, and there was no event at the local arena. These lighter spots were big enough that they only looked to me like clouds, not beams or stars or anything else. They weren't moving. Then they just disappeared, all at once. Could someone in the city have their own stationary spotlights that they happened to switch off just as I was looking at them? I guess so. Seems possible. Is that even legal, though? In the vicinity of an airport, no less? Not that a law would prevent someone from doing it anyway, but I'm open to an explanation, and the more I think about it, the more I feel like I just don't know where to find one. I wish I could have had more time to process what I was seeing, but until they disappeared, I really thought I was just looking at clouds. And so I was looking in the appreciative, open, casual way that I always do. Nobody on Reddit, Nextdoor, or the rest of the internet seems to have seen this, except for me. Appearing marble. When I was in high school, my friend Paul, after gym one day, gave me this marble. Nothing special, just a light blue marble with like clouds in it. I went home and I put it in my armoire, shut the door, and I let it be. It was maybe 2 or 3 days later, I had gotten out of school and went into the armoire to grab something and noticed that I now had 2 marbles. One being the light blue with clouds, and the second one was dark blue and also had clouds. The very first thing that I did was call up my buddy, Paul. I asked if he had a second marble that I didn't know about that went with mine, and he said yes. I asked him to go find it, and I could almost hear him discover the fact that it wasn't there. I then told him that I had the marble with me right next to the one that he gave me. Now, Paul and I lived very far from each other, and neither of us drove as we were both freshmen. He also hadn't come over during those 3 days. We mainly hung out at school or just at his place. Come to think of it, throughout high school he'd only probably been over to my house like 4 times, so he definitely didn't just bring it over. This has racked my brain for years, and I just wanted to share it. Empty box became full overnight. I keep a box of cotton swabs in the top drawer of my desk. I use them for blemishes, makeup corrections, and to clean my piercings, so I use them very frequently. I open the drawer daily because I keep other products in there too that I use on a daily basis. I intended for the past few days to go to the store because I was running out. There's no possibility of false memory in this situation because I was the one reaching into the near empty box, limiting myself how much I was using to make it stretch and keeping track of the mere few that I had left, so I knew when I really had to go to the store. Yesterday, the box was to the point where I made a pact with myself to go to the store. The box was empty and I just had to get more. This morning, I wake up, I open the drawer as I always do, and there's an almost full box of cotton swabs waiting for me. I say almost full because it was an open box and there was obviously some already missing, but overall, basically a full box, and the same exact brand that I used before. I texted my roommate, "Thank you," because I had at first assumed she looked into my drawer and gave me hers since she uses them a lot less than I do. She texted me back asking what I was talking about. She didn't give me any swabs. She didn't even know that I needed some. So now, I have a full box of cotton swabs that quite literally appeared out of thin air. I have no idea if I even want to use them now. I've had experiences in the past with glitches like this, but so much time has passed, I began to think that I was just remembering wrong, but the one thing that happened this morning reminds me that reality is strange in itself. The lawnmower cord. A couple of months ago, I bought my partner a new cordless mower to replace the old one. The main reason for the purchase was because the cord was cracked in several places, and the cracks were covered by insulation tape in 5 or 6 spots, and in some spots, the wires were visible. I distinctly remember retaping a couple of spots over the years. I've been with my partner for 12 years, and this was her lawnmower, and she had taped the spots herself. She's the gardener of the house, and whenever she mowed the lawn, I would warn her not to step on the broken spots on the cord for fear of electrocution, as she did me on the very few times that I mowed. This carried on for years until I bought the new one. I didn't tell her that I bought one, but when it arrived, I told her it was because it was lighter for her, but mostly it was because of the cord issues. She thanked me, and we started spring with a new mower. A couple of weeks later, I'm rooting through the garage, and I noticed what I presumed to be a new bright yellow cord on the old mower. The old one was gray, ratty, and taped in spots. When my partner came home from work, I asked her why she had got it replaced. She looked at me blankly and said it hadn't been replaced. The yellow cord had always been on the mower. I reminded her of the reason I told her for getting a new one. She said she wasn't sure what I meant about the cord, but chose not to say anything. So I went through everything that I have written with her. I remember all the lighthearted warnings regarding the cord. I remember retaping several spots all over a 12-year period. But she has no idea what I'm talking about. The lawnmower is the only one she's ever had, and nothing was ever wrong with the cord. And it's never been replaced, and we've never had any electrocution jokes regarding the cord. I simply cannot explain it. My lip gloss teleported. Okay, I'm sort of freaking out right now. I was just out with some friends at a bar, and we were not drunk yet, mind you. And basically, anytime I use the bathroom anywhere, it's sort of a ritual. I come back and A, I put lotion on my hands, and B, I use my lip gloss. I had already done this twice tonight. Then, somehow, on the third time, my lip gloss went missing. I looked everywhere, even had my friends and the people around me looking for it too. It didn't make sense that it would just disappear because it's a round metal tin that's like 2 inches in diameter. I eventually gave up and decided that either someone found it and took it, or that it was just lost into the ether. Well, fast forward an hour as we're about to leave. I got into my car, and on the floor of the passenger side seat was my lip gloss. I'm sorry, but I used this lip gloss at least twice while I was inside, and there's no way that it was in my car, which I hadn't been in since we got there. This is blowing my mind right now. Painting I lost was back on the mantelpiece after being missing for some time. My boyfriend painted me a sunflower on a mini canvas that came with a mini easel. I keep it on the mantelpiece in the living room, and my 2 cats have a tendency to knock it off, along with all the other trinkets that are up there. A few weeks ago, I got home from work and the painting was missing. I assumed that the cats knocked it off again, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Eventually, I gave up looking and assumed that it would just turn up underneath something when I was looking for the never-ending things they knock off. My boyfriend lives about an hour away from me, and whenever I go and stay at his house, my friend feeds the cats for me, because I live alone. Yesterday, while I was getting ready to go and see him, I dropped my eyeliner and it rolled under the couch. While I was looking, I also collected some things that the cats had knocked over under there, and had another look for the sunflower painting, but I still couldn't find it. When I got home this evening, I sat down on the couch and then noticed the sunflower painting was back on the easel on the mantelpiece. I immediately called my friend and asked her where she found the painting, but she didn't know what I was talking about. She said she knows that it was missing. I mean, we've talked about it several times because I felt bad that it had gone missing when he spent time painting it for me. But she didn't find it, and she doesn't remember if it was there or not yesterday, as she had just fed the cats, used the bathroom, and then left. Is this a glitch, or is something weirder happening? Matrix rewinded man walking on the sidewalk. I was commuting to work the other day when I was in relatively heavy traffic. It was around 8 a.m. I glanced over at someone walking on the sidewalk, traveling in the same direction as me, but on the other side of the road. I was coming up to a red light, so I put eyes on the road before registering what I saw. Imagine a video of a man walking, but you rewind the video at the same speed. The man looked like somebody took the click remote to him and was rewinding him. When I looked back, he was walking forward like normal. Now, keep in mind, this was brief, and I know all kinds of things can cause, let's just call them optical illusions. But it sure looked weird though. Unexplainable, reappearing sunglasses. My husband has a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses that went missing at some point last year. We weren't sure if he misplaced them or just lost them in the street. Since it was summertime, he wanted to wear his sunglasses, so multiple times we'd searched the house. We'd look in drawers, the wardrobe, even in the car. We searched anywhere that you could think to look, and these sunglasses were nowhere to be seen. Since we couldn't find them, my husband said that he thought he may have left them at his parents' house by accident when he last visited them, and that he would check for them the next time he went there. A few weeks passed, and there was still no sign of the sunglasses. We had an event coming up in the afternoon, but on the morning of that day, I'd done a load of laundry. I was standing in our bedroom, putting away the laundry while my husband was getting dressed, and I looked at him and I said, "You know, it's a shame you haven't gotten your sunglasses here." With that, I opened the drawer to put some clothes away, and sitting there, on top of the clothes that were already in the drawer, were his sunglasses. The same ones that we'd been searching for months prior. I picked them up and said, "Oh my God," as I looked at my husband. The both of us were just in utter shock and disbelief. Over the months that we'd been searching for them, those drawers had been opened at least once a day while getting dressed or putting away laundry. The drawer had been emptied when we checked for them prior, and the clothes put back in after being washed, and the same drawer had been opened only 10 minutes before this too, but there were no sunglasses in there. Yet, when I opened the drawer on this day after making that remark, there they were. This still absolutely boggles my mind to this day, and there's nothing that can explain how they appeared there after being missing for months. Do you think this is an actual glitch? Has anyone else experienced anything like this? I don't know. It makes me question everything about life and the way we view it. Glitch on Monday night/Tuesday? Anyone? I'll start this off by prefacing that I've ruled out pretty much any other explanation for this. Sometime between going to sleep Monday night and returning from work Tuesday evening, two of my possessions got up and just blipped out of existence. I had a bag on my windowsill and a vape in my bed. I saw the bag on Monday night before going to sleep. Same thing for the vape. I even saw the vape Tuesday morning when I woke up. It was next to a lighter on my bed. Cut to Tuesday evening when I get home from work. The bag is gone, and so is the vape. Completely missing, I tore my entire room apart looking for them. They're nowhere to be found. Nobody else had access to my apartment during that time, and I definitely did not remove them from my room. I would remember if I had, since I did a deep clean on Monday night of my living room and wouldn't have taken those things out of my room for any reason. So, how did they go missing? Completely disappeared without a trace. And, you know, the more interesting part to this is that my boyfriend hasn't seen his backpack since Monday. He's looked everywhere for it, but that too has blipped out of existence. He remembers going home with it, taking his laptop out of it, and it's been gone since then. Just vanished. I was wondering if anybody else had this issue between Monday, April 1 and Tuesday, April 2. At this point, I truly think that I'm losing my mind. Grocery glitch. The other day, I got home from grocery shopping for a few items that we were out of, one being cooking oil and bacon. I started to put away the food and noticed a pan on the stove with what looked like oil. After a quick taste test, I realized that it was bacon fat and we had been out of bacon for a while. I thought it was really odd, and I eventually got distracted by the dogs, the cats, the kids, and a power nap. Later in the day, I asked my kid when he cooked the bacon. He told me that he did it while I napped. Okay, I looked in the fridge and half the new package of bacon was gone. A true and complete glitch. Besides, who sleeps through the amazing aroma of bacon being cooked? My kids think I'm showing signs of that old age memory thing, but I eventually decided to give up trying to convince them of what I saw. Somewhere out there, my parallel child got to enjoy a bacon snack thanks to this glitch. My first glitch. This happened this morning. I was working on my computer, actively printing from my printer that sits on a table to my left, right under a window that faces the street. My dogs started barking, so I naturally looked out the window and I saw a black SUV in the middle of the road. I don't know how long it had been there, but it pulled off just seconds after I noticed it. About 2 to 5 minutes later, my printer had an issue, so I turned to face it and I noticed that there was a black SUV in the middle of the road that again pulled off just seconds after I saw it. I immediately thought of the most obvious explanations. Maybe someone at a neighboring house just left the house, forgot something, and then came back for it and left again. I happened to have my security cameras app open and looked at the screen just as the car pulled off for the second time so that I had a timestamp for it. Knowing the second time that it pulled off gave me an idea of how far back to watch to see it pull off for the first time. I went back 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I didn't see any black SUV. I saw the mailman come and go, which is when my dogs barked. I saw another car drive down the road, and then I saw the black SUV pull out of a deep driveway, so I couldn't see it parked in the driveway from where I was sitting, one time and one time only. If I have psychic abilities, I sure wish they could be used for something more beneficial than having visions of a car leaving my neighbor's house. Time slip road trip. One time, I left the range with my dad in his truck and my son driving us in my car. He got on the interstate right in front of us, but he got stuck behind a semi-truck as we merged. My son was able to go around in the second lane, but my dad just stayed cruising, no hurry. I thought how we were going to beat him to the neighborhood as I watched as he disappeared in the side mirror. It's a 30-minute drive home, and we live near each other, and there's only one route. My son was commenting on how my dad wasn't going to be home for another 15 minutes because he was driving so slow. I have his location, so I checked it as we pull on to the main neighborhood road, and it says he's already home, in the back of the neighborhood. I text him and I ask him how long he's been home because we passed him and we never saw him again. He calls me stunned because he had been home long enough to bring in all of his things and let the dogs out that he just let back in. He didn't know how he beat us either. He said he was behind the semi for most of the way, and he thought that we'd be home already. We still don't know what happened. This is the only time that I've been legit spooked by a weird happening. My first glitch. Yesterday, I think I experienced my first honest-to-goodness glitch in the Matrix, and it's been messing with my head ever since. According to the flowchart, I should post my story or counter or experience or whatever I'm calling it, so here it is. I've been a lurker for a while now, but I've never had anything to contribute until now. Typically, I come to work at 0700, and most of the others come in about an hour later. I keep an eye on the lobby until the window is open. The shades are drawn until 0800, and I do so via the camera system. When you enter the building, there's an outer lobby and then a second inner lobby after going through the glass doors between the two lobbies. The window is bulletproof glass, and the door is secure, so you must have your fob to enter or be buzzed in. The only reason I keep an eye on the lobby is to let other employees in. My work bestie, we'll call them L, comes in a little after 0800 each day. I checked the cameras and watched L enter the lobby from the outer lobby. I watched her walk through the glass doors, and she was wearing her yellow or green puffy-ish coat, carrying her canvas bag and purple paisley lunch bag on her right arm. She used her right hand to swipe her fob and enter the building through the secure door. I heard it open. Of note, she has the same routine each day. She comes into the area where they have their desks and I have my office. She turns on a particular light, punches in at the computer located at the window, and then she sets her things on her chair at her own desk. I was hanging out by my office door, chomping at the bit to tell her something, and she didn't come through for quite some time. I thought to myself, maybe she went to see E first thing instead. He was looking for her after all. I sat back down at my desk to continue working, and I watch her via the camera. She comes in the outer lobby, comes through the doors from the outer lobby into the inner lobby. Everything is the same except for her coat. She now has on a reddish/pinkish coat, but her path and movements and bag and lunch bag, it's all the same. I know something didn't happen where the cameras started playing old footage from a prior morning. All of my other views, I have 10 views at once throughout the building, were also running normally. I also haven't looked back at the footage to see if I saw her twice. I have a hunch that I'll only see her the once this time around. It was so trippy because I know that I watched her walk in that first time in the yellow/green coat. I kept coming back to it throughout the day and thinking on it, so I thought that I would share my first glitch here with you. Scissors mocked me. Around maybe 4 months ago, we lost our office scissors. We used them frequently, and them being gone was really strange because we always put them back in the designated drawer, which is kind of an autistic tick from me. Anyway, yesterday, we bought a brand new pair of scissors because we got tired of using the kitchen scissors for everything. Well, guess who just appeared in the drawer after we unpacked the new scissors and put them in the drawer? I can't put my head around the fact that we searched for the original scissors in every possible drawer and emptied them several times. It's just strange. P.S. I really enjoy reading all the stories here, but I never would have thought that I could write one of my own. Curious case of time glitch disappearing pita. I stopped and got some takeout curry chicken, rice, and a pita posing as naan. Brought it home and I was excited to dig in. I had ripped the pita in half. I put one half directly in front of me on the counter, and the other half I put back in the bag that it came in. I was almost all set to move into my living room, but had to grab a paper towel just off to my left. I reached over and ripped off a couple of pieces, turned around, and the half pita that I just ripped off was gone. I was confused, but I calmly started to look in the immediate area, thinking maybe it fell or slid just out of view. A bit more frustrated now, I started pulling out drawers and opening cabinet doors. Nothing. I took a few steps back, I pulled in a few deep breaths, and carefully scanned the entire area. But nope. Gone. About 15 minutes in, my friend in my living room asks if I'm okay. I asked him to do me a big favor and come see if he sees my half a pita. He looks over my counters, my sink, cupboards, drawers, fridge, and then asks why the hell he's looking for half a pita. I explained that it was literally right in front of me, but when I turned around, it was gone. Now, here's where it gets really weird. We have a few exchanges and things start to slow down. He reaches over and grabs the bag that contains the other half of the pita. He pulls out and sees that there's only half in there. folds it and puts it back in the bag. As he placed the bag back on the counter, in the blink of an eye, the missing pita was sitting back on the counter, less than an inch away from my waist, leaning up against the counter. It wasn't there. Blink in what felt like slow motion. As my eyes opened from the blink, it's there again. We both stood there, stunned, to say the least. Now, he's the kind of guy whose brain would break if he thought it through, so he abruptly switched back into the demeanor that he was in before I called him into the kitchen. But me? Not so much. To top it all off, the very next day, a YouTube channel that I follow put out an unusual video that's not in line with what's usually discussed on the channel. Now, the host of the YouTube channel said, "I received so many messages from people all around the world reporting what I can only characterize as a glitch in time or some kind of warp in the timeline, asking if anyone else had shared similar stories." And that really just puts a bow on this whole experience for me. My sister found my sports bra in a place where I had already looked. I was 16 years old. My boyfriend at the time invited me to go with him to his family reunion. It was tradition to play a game of soccer at that family reunion, which I was willing to do. I obviously wanted to wear my sports bra. I'm in my bedroom, getting ready, and I'm wearing a shirt but no bra. My parents were not home. They were out having a lunch date, so my sister and I were home alone, just the two of us. Here's something that you should know about me. I'm very neurotic. I always start getting ready for something at least an hour before I'm scheduled to leave the house. That way, I have all the time in the world to get dressed. When my sister noticed the time and also noticed that I still hadn't left, she asked me about that. I told her that I couldn't find my sports bra. My sister then said, "Isn't that it right there?" And she pointed to my bed. And there it was. My sports bra was right on my pillow. I didn't recall placing it on my bed at all, but I'm telling you that while I was searching, I looked on my bed multiple times just to see if I left it there without remembering. My bed was made, and there was nothing else on my bed, beside my blankets, of course. Therefore, this cannot be explained away with the theory that I just didn't notice. I'm telling you, I looked on top of my bed multiple times, and that sports bra was never there. When my sister entered my room and pointed to my bed, my bra was there right on my pillow. Now, I didn't mention any of this to my sister. I just thanked her, hugged her, and then I left. After I put on my sports bra, of course. Blind fixture vanished and then reappeared. I can't really explain what my wife and I just experienced. It's not terribly exciting, but there's no logical explanation that we can think of. I was upstairs fitting a window blind in my boy's room. It's a 4x2-meter room with very little in it other than his bed. The only door is opposite the window. My wife was downstairs with the boy. I asked her to come up for a second so she could help me position the blind against the window. For some context, we're both pretty frustrated already and want this thing done, as it's taken longer than it should have due to problems with tools and having to saw the blind. It's past the boy's bedtime and we just want it done. So, she comes up, We grab an end of the blind each, and I see one of the brackets is missing from the end of the tube. It was literally just there, and now it isn't. I'm baffled as I hadn't removed it, or seen or heard it drop, and she's annoyed because it's setting the simple task back even further. We scour the room, although there really isn't anywhere that it could be. I upend the bed, I check the curtains, check my one and only pocket, I retrace my steps, but it's gone. Exasperated and confused, we resign ourselves to not being able to get this job done tonight. She returns downstairs and I pack up my drill and just set it outside the door. As I turn around into the room again, there, on the floor, bright white against the charcoal carpet, is the missing 2-inch bracket. There's literally no way that either of us wouldn't have seen that. But there it is. I call my wife and I tell her that I found it and where it was, and she's as confused as me. I genuinely don't understand what happened. Soccer ball. Last night, my kid wouldn't listen and kept kicking his soccer ball in the house to the point where I got frustrated and I grabbed the soccer ball and literally threw it into the garage so that he couldn't mess with it anymore. He was right there. My wife was on the couch and she saw me throw it. The next morning, my son has soccer practice and we cannot find the ball anywhere in the garage, and we looked all over. So he grabs a different ball and goes to practice. Fast forward to later that afternoon, I go to mow the grass, and as I get around to the backyard, the ball that I threw into the garage is in our back patio, underneath the patio table. I about fell over when I saw it. It was late at night when I threw the ball into the garage and everyone went to bed shortly after, and nobody went into the garage after I threw the ball. All three of us know that I threw the ball into the garage, and somehow the ball was outside the next day after nobody had been in there at all. I have no explanation for how this happened. Friends and I watched a slow-flying fire fly through the air. I found this sub after reading about that lamp story, and after looking around, I decided to post this. Honestly, I can't explain what we saw, so maybe it qualifies as a glitch. Anyway, last week, a buddy of mine flew into town from out of state for his younger brother's high school graduation. Before he flew down, he reached out to all of us and wanted to plan for us to get together while he was in town. Two of the guys still live in Georgia, but I drove down from Tennessee to see them all as well since we don't get the chance very often. We went out for some Korean barbecue, and afterwards, we're standing in the parking lot just chatting and hanging out more prior to ending the evening. Everything was normal up to this point. I don't recall which one of us saw it first, but eventually, one of us saw something in the sky above and pointed it out to the group. The only way that I can describe what we saw was that it was like a flickering flame, like a burning fire just slowly and awkwardly flying through the sky. At first, we thought it was a firework or something, but it just kept burning and slowly traveling across the sky above us. It was moving entirely too slow to be a firework, moving horizontally. I actually got chills for a minute thinking that it might be a freaking missile or something with the situation that Russia had going on. One of the guys also freaked out as he thought it was an airplane on fire, but as we watched it, we all ended up agreeing that it looked too close to be moving that slow. We could just about make out the different colors of the fire, like that flickering orange and yellow flame kind of a thing, so it was close enough to see those details. I'm gonna guess maybe 200 or 300 feet up. The speed was slow, very slow in my opinion for something as low as that felt. The speed also varied a bit. It would speed up and slow down oddly. It didn't fly in a straight line, but this like weird, unstable looking way. As in, it would move left and right, in relation to its direction at least, in quick little short bursts. Definitely not a plane. We couldn't make out any other details at all as it slowly moved across the sky. I suggested that it might be a drone on fire, but one of the guys who actually flies drones said that didn't seem right. He said the way it flew didn't look like a drone, and also said he would be surprised if a flaming drone could keep flying for as long as we had been watching this thing. Lastly, he mentioned that lithium cells generally go up pretty violently, and this was definitely not a violent fire. It just seemed like a flying, gentle campfire or something. It never fell from the sky. It never went out. We just watched until it went past the buildings and the tree line. In total, I estimate that we might have watched it for about 3 or 4 minutes or so. Close to the end of the event, one of the guys got out his phone and took a short video. We didn't do it any sooner, as we were all just shocked at what we were seeing at first. After that, we were a bit freaked out, so we called it a night and we split. On the way back to my hotel, I just kept thinking about what we saw. I don't know why, but I just felt uncomfortable for the rest of the night. I kept looking up into the sky for the rest of the night. Just had a really weird experience with losing and then finding my glasses. On Thursday night, I wound up falling asleep on the love seat in our living room while watching TV. I woke up that morning to find my glasses weren't on my face. I looked around all the logical spots where they could have fallen off, or whatever spots that I could have put them if I had woken up for half a second to take them off and had forgotten about. I don't know why I thought that was so funny. Just imagining somebody waking up to take their glasses off and then immediately falling back to sleep. They weren't anywhere obvious, so I pulled back and I got a case of the sillies. I'm sorry. They weren't anywhere obvious, so I pulled the back and seat cushions off the love seat and checked all the nooks and crannies around the pull-out bed inside the chair. I tipped it back to see if they were under it, and I didn't see them anywhere. I checked the side table, its drawers, behind the love seat. I wandered the whole living room for like 3 or 4 times, and my glasses were absolutely gone. At that point, I gave up because I had to head out for work, and I wound up having to grab my spare pair, which have a broken bow and absolutely suck to wear. When I got home, I looked again, pulling the love seat apart and searching everywhere that I had checked that morning, and still, my glasses seemed to have just vanished. On Saturday, when I got home from work, I did all that again and then some, pulling cushions, checking weird places with my phone's flashlight, and combing every square inch of the living room, figuring I must have had some sleepwalking episode and set them somewhere really dumb. But again, no glasses. And by that point, I started to think that a tear in the space-time continuum had opened up in my living room and swallowed my glasses, which were at that moment floating in a fish tank in the home of some fifth-dimensional alien being. Then, yesterday, Sunday, I get home from work again, half pissed off that my glasses were still missing because I was getting sick of wearing the spares. The broken bow was somehow making the nose rest cut into the bridge of my nose, so I was spending every waking moment in actual pain from these things, and I decided to do my fourth search. I started with the love seat, again, checking the right side, the left side, and then bam! There they were. There were my folded up glasses wedged between the cushion and the armrest like a lost TV remote. I mean, I'm not complaining that I finally found them, but God, I'm so confused as to how they were there. I pulled the cushion off that love seat 3 or 4 times, and it's the only cushion that it has, so by all means I should have found my glasses right off the bat. They should have clattered right to the floor the second that I pulled the cushion out. I don't know, dude. All I can think of is that they were somehow stuck to the edge of the cushion, so my glasses came with it whenever I pulled it out, but that makes zero sense either because there was nothing for them to stick to or snag onto, especially since the glasses part, aka the smooth side, was facing the cushion. Other than that, I have no answers. Not unless we've got a homeless dude living in our attic who decided to play a prank on me. Or ghosts. Or maybe that rift in the space-time continuum decided to spit them back into our plane of existence. I don't know. It just makes me feel extra motivated to buy a spare pair. I can tell you that much. Same person in 2 places at once. Me and my partner are both Uber Eats drivers. I had a pickup from McDonald's. I was waiting for my order when a man that works at a local salad bar walks in with his 2 kids. I recognized him instantly and stood about a meter away from him, so I know it's for sure him. I pick up the food 2 minutes later and I leave. A few minutes later, my partner calls saying, "Guess who I just dropped food off to?" I made jokes about whoever, and then he says, "The salad bar guy." He is far south from the McDonald's at his drop-off, so I know this isn't possible. I said to him, "That can't be because I just saw him at McDonald's up north." We then went over his appearance, and we're both positive that we saw the same man. And as we both pick up food from his salad bar quite often, we're pretty familiar with him. We're just both so confused. I found yarn that I don't own on my carpet. So, I'm a crocheter, and also a menace to society, and more pressingly, myself. When I'm crocheting on my bed and I trim loose ends of yarn, I tend to drop them on the carpet for future me to deal with whenever I next vacuum. Mind you, this happened on a day after I'd recently vacuumed, so the floor was clean for once to start with. I was working on a project that utilized 4 shades of red, happily weaving in ends and dropping yarn on the floor, as is my wont, and going to bed without cleaning it up. When I woke up, I surveyed the damage that I'd done the previous night. Amongst all the red yarn that I dropped, was a singular strand of a pea greenish color. Now, I can't stress this enough that I have zero explanation as to how it got there or where it even came from. Not only was my floor completely clean before I'd started working the previous day, and I wasn't working with that color of yarn, but I did not, at the time, own any green yarn. Nor had I ever purchased or used yarn in that particular shade of green in my life. I know, it's a small occurrence, but it's perplexing and logically improbable, so I figured it was worth sharing. Body on top of the truck wasn't there. This happened my first year of high school, and I never really got over it. I used to take the school bus every day back home, and there was one big highway connecting the more central area where the school was with the countryside where me and most of my classmates lived. When there was a traffic accident or some car broke down, the whole highway would become congested because it was a very narrow one to begin with. And there was this afternoon where one truck broke down and paralyzed 3 out of the 4 lanes because it was so huge. Our school bus was only a few meters away, so as we were stuck there waiting for the police to release traffic, I could see the broken truck in very sharp detail. The driver outside calling on his phone, checking the tires, stuff like that. When I looked up on top of the truck, not the cabin, the actual cargo, I saw a body laying down, wearing white socks and covered by a white plastic. I just stared at it for minutes and it never moved. I was honestly so shocked that I didn't even manage to say a word and ask if anyone else was seeing what I was seeing. Yeah, I was mainly the quiet kid, and I think everyone else was just distracted on their phones or something. As I said, it would take a while for traffic to be released because the highway was just so narrow, so we were there for at least probably half an hour. But when the bus finally departed, I looked again at the top of the truck and there was nothing there anymore. It simply vanished, disappeared. But how could it have? This was a big truck. The driver or someone else could have never climbed it. And even if someone would have, the police would have certainly noticed, right? I don't know. It's very strange. I never quite got what that was. Somebody asked a good comment. They said, "Did you ever find out for sure if someone had died in that accident? And was the accident ever on the news?" OP replies with, "No one died, and it wasn't an accident, just the truck was broken down. I drove by the same spot with my dad later that day, and the truck was still there. No ambulance ever came, no forensics either, which both happens when there's an accident with victims, so this wasn't that." Glitches that anyone can do. I have a habit of doing 2 things on the computer at once. Typically, this is listening to / watching a podcast on YouTube while I'm playing a game. Normally, if this is the type of thing that had happened maybe once or twice, I would just chuckle and then write it off, but this has happened about 50 times, so there's gotta be something to it. Instance 1. I'd posted a KFC joke on Facebook. I thought it would get more laughs, but it didn't. I forgot about it. Then I loaded up a moonlighting episode on Hulu and went back to Facebook, where I had a notification. A friend of mine, Bill Ander, had just laughed at the post, and almost simultaneously, Sybil Shepherd's character, Maddie, says this exact phrase: "We could have been in charge of all the security for all the chicken licking stores in California." Instance 2. I was playing the popular Steam game Planet Crafter and watching the Y-Files. Just as I was extracting the element silicon, AJ, the host of the Y-Files, actually said the word silicon. Instance 3. Playing Savior, a Ren'Py game, while listening to Solve's song Vanilla Tears. She sings, "Tell me what you're waiting for." At the exact moments that I'm reading the text, "Come on, what are you waiting for? Tell me what's on your mind," from the Ren'Py game. And anyone can download both of these. Instance number 4. I hadn't thought of or even heard about the magazine Maxim in at least 12 years, maybe more. I was playing another Ren'Py game, this one called The Roommate, while I turned on a documentary called The Dark Side of the 2000s. They just started talking about the rise and fall of the magazine Maxim, and the game simultaneously had me interact with Maxim magazine. I actually let out that whistle that people do when they've been spooked. There are many others, but they're all the same. I'm playing a game or visual novel and watching a show, and some sort of completely bizarre coincidence will take place. Clearly, with the show Moonlighting, with that show originally airing back in 1984, time displacement seems to have no bearing on the likelihood of this coincidence. Previous life detected. Hi. I've been listening to your videos for a few weeks. Lately, the algorithm has come across several past life stories that you've read. I got curious and wondered who my previous avatar might have been, so I asked the Matrix to let me know if possible. Well, a couple of hours later, I was Googling something and entered the first 2 letters into the search bar and no more. I don't remember hitting the enter key. I immediately ended up on a Wikipedia page with a black and white photo. I felt nauseous when I saw the face, even now, to be honest. There's a guy that looks like me if I was a man, or at least close to my appearance. He was executed by the Nazis in 1939. The Wikipedia article doesn't say much about his life, only that he was an active member of the resistance movement after Germany invaded my country. The thing is, if I Google his name, this page doesn't show up in the results, and if I search the name directly on Wikipedia, his profile is at the bottom since there are more famous people with the same name. So there's no way that I accidentally hit the wrong keys and got the first result. I'm a screenwriter, and for the last 6 months, I've been working on a mini-series that's somehow better than everything I've written so far, and the writing comes easier than ever before. How did I name the main character all those months ago? You can guess. Both name and surname. He died on the 17th, and I was born on the 17th. Also, he was exactly 1 level down from my current life path number. My mom says I used to be a strange kid. I was instantly interested in politics and other adult stuff. I've always been very patriotic for a girl, including my writing, which is mostly spy-themed. And I guess, now I know why. All the best, Danny. random shirt glitches out of existence and then materializes half a year later. I've never posted to Reddit before, but I have checked out stuff here and there, so I hope I'm going about this the right way. Also, not sure if this belongs in r/paranormal or not, but it feels more appropriate here. This sounds like the most random, stupid thing ever, and I've put off posting because of such. However, it was such a bizarre and peculiar incident that I finally caved, and here we are. I realize there will be people who simply write this off or scuff, but this is my story. A few years back, I had a random shirt go missing from my closet, only to one day, much later, close to half a year later, if memory serves me correct, find it nice and neatly folded laying on the floor in front of my closet doors. What makes this weird is I'm an extremely orderly person, almost OCD in nature, and live my life by schedule, routine, and order to the best of my ability. I do everything a certain way. I know what I have and own, and I know where everything is in my home. At the time, I lived in apartments. It's outside of my character to misplace something or lose track of most anything. I'm just one of those types of people. I noticed a cheap Walmart V-neck shirt wasn't hanging in my closet one day while I was looking for it. The brand is rustic blue, size small, color burgundy. I don't even know if they still make or sell this specific brand anymore. And this was odd because I remembered specifically washing, dyeing, and hanging it in the closet recently, just like I've always done. But I wrote it off at the time, thinking maybe I left it at my girlfriend's place, or that maybe I was tripping out and it was in the dirty laundry. No, it was not in the dirty laundry, and no, it was not at my girlfriend's apartment. I even asked her a few times to double check, and we actually looked together for the shirt once. It was a dumb, cheap shirt that no one would ever care about in a million years, but I liked it because of its versatility. I could throw it on before church, running errands in town, or just wear it casually around my home. Plus, it was really soft and comfortable. I really liked that shirt, so when it went missing, I noticed. And I went to great efforts to find it. Apart from the above-mentioned searching dirty laundry basket and girlfriend's place, I scoured through my apartment, looking behind furniture, looking in other rooms, cracks, crevices. I looked literally everywhere, and this shirt just vanished. The apartment complex has a small laundromat for renters to use, and I checked down there, thinking that I might have left it behind, but no, not there either. Then I thought maybe another renter took the shirt from a dryer, but sadly, a small rural town in which I reside has a drug problem and addicts rob and steal all the time. My apartment complex had just a few of these characters, but they never really appeared to do anything too crazy. But I have heard of people getting their laundry stolen. I used to throw in my laundry into either the washers or dryers and simply walk back to my apartment until they were done, come back and fold everything, and then walk back to put the clothes away. There was a chance that it got taken by someone at that laundromat when I wasn't there. That's actually what I came to believe, so I finally gave up looking and just chalked it up to a loss. But for a while, it laid in the back of my mind and bothered me a fair deal. I eventually forgot about the shirt. I got some new ones and moved on. Months went by, and I went about my life as usual. Then, one random day, out of the blue, I found my long-lost shirt. Coming home from work one day, I was getting ready to get showered and cleaned up. venturing to my closet to pick out what I'm going to wear after my shower. And right there, right on the floor, directly in front of and basically up against my closet with double doors, was my burgundy V-neck shirt, folded nice and neat. Before my very eyes was the shirt that evaded me for all this time. I was flabbergasted. I just couldn't believe what I was looking at. There it was, after such a long time, and heck, I had even eventually forgotten about it. It had been so long. All those memories of the shirt going missing and me painstakingly looking for it everywhere came back to me, and I was confused. A few weird things worth mentioning. This shirt was folded in a way that I simply don't fold my shirts. It was folded like how you would see sitting on a store shelf, the two sleeves tucked behind and folded with part of the front of the shirt showing. I fold my shirts with a slight crease down the middle temporarily until I'm able to hang them up. This shirt wasn't folded by me. Secondly, there's absolutely no way this shirt could have been laying there this entire time in front of my closet, where I come and stand every single day without me obviously noticing. Also, I wouldn't have been able to open the closet doors without them catching on the shirt. I was happy to have this cheap shirt back because, like I said, I loved it. It's super comfortable. But this whole situation was extremely odd and felt off. How did the shirt go missing for such a long time and randomly end up resurfacing months later on the floor, folded in a way that I don't fold shirts? Here's a bit of the timeline and some other items of interest. This happened several years ago at my former residence, again, in an apartment complex. I didn't mention previously, but this complex is right beside the biggest cemetery in the town. And no, I don't really believe this to be paranormal in nature, nor does the cemetery have anything to do with this. I'm a super skeptical person and usually dismiss any ghost story or things similar. It's not that I'm not open to supernatural things, I just don't see this being a thing. I can admit that it does feel like there's a small chance that there's a paranormal element in this event, but I highly doubt it. That's one of the reasons I opted to post this in r/glitch in the matrix instead of r/paranormal. I moved to my current residence. It's a small 2-bedroom house in late 2019. December to be exact, because it was right before Christmas. The shirt was found earlier that year, close to around springtime, because I remember finding the shirt before Easter 2019. I can't say for sure when the shirt went missing, but I believe it was just before autumn of 2018, because I was still wearing t-shirts. With autumn and winter, like most people, I wear long sleeve stuff like hoodies and sweaters, so the t-shirts get placed to the side of the closet until spring. I would have still been wearing t-shirts at the time that it disappeared. Easter 2019 fell on April 21st. Backtracking into pre-autumn 2018, September 22 would mean roughly 6 to 7 months with this shirt being absent. It's about half a year. That's about the best I can do as far as the timeline. Again, I never considered sharing this story until recently and rejected the idea only to finally decide to share it. This person includes an edit that debunks some theories. The first theory is my girlfriend had it and just put it back one day. My ex-girlfriend now would never do such a thing, and I considered for a time that she was pranking me. I quickly wrote this off because it's not just in her nature to do, plus, why would she? For 7 months, just let me worry about a stupid, cheap shirt so that she could laugh one day when I found it? It doesn't make any sense. Also, I specifically looked for the shirt at her place with her, and I left no stone unturned, even checking both of our cars. Theory 2. I simply misplaced it. This couldn't have happened. Not even close to a possibility. The type of person that I am would have found the shirt early on. Also, there's no way that it was just laying on the floor in front of my closet without my noticing. Just not a thing that could have happened. Here are 2 possible theories that I can't debunk. 1, it's a glitch. I don't know. I hear these stories from time to time about strange things happening. Again, I'm pretty skeptical and close to writing off this theory, but because I simply don't know. The second and more likely theory, at least in my mind, is something I'm going to have to share in an update. I apologize. It's pretty involved and takes a very dark and unexpected turn, unfortunately. I just don't have the time today to continue, but I will post an update sometime this week on what I suspect happened with a decent percentile of likelihood. Thank you for taking the time to check this out, as unhinged as it sounds. Hey, it's me. I waited long enough to record this to actually read the update, and this is what they said. Update. As I ended my story, I mentioned one single solitary theory that I came up with that I believe has the highest likelihood. This one takes a while to get there, but hang with me, we will. Before I spit out my theory on what I think caused one of my shirts to disappear from my closet and resurface months later in a much peculiar fashion, first, I need to go back to when I first moved into the apartment. I live in a typical small town in rural America. There's not much going on. The country aspect almost seems to merge with the town. Farms, gas stations, a few dollar stores, Walmart, and restaurants are what's on offer. Also, a small movie theater and skating rink, so, not much is happening. There are a few apartment complexes in town, and they're nothing like you would see in big cities. They're small, consisting of around 20 to maybe 30 units. The one that I moved into is literally on the outskirts of town. Not only that, as I mentioned in the previous post, it's situated right beside the biggest cemetery in town, both of which are atop a sizable hill. This cemetery is no joke. For such a small town, by the size of this graveyard, you'd think it belongs in a much larger city. It's super creepy too. Old, giant angel statues, crumbling headstones, and newer ones too. There's also a couple of walk-in mausoleums there. I don't put much belief in ghosts or paranormal stuff, but even I have to admit, this place is creepy. Nonetheless, big cemetery right here, and right up against it was my apartment complex. Rather odd things started happening to me upon moving in. I try to find natural causes and stuff, and often considered some of these occurrences coincidental or easily explainable, for the most part. Sleep paralysis began for me, so that was terrifying. And never have I ever had sleep paralysis a single day in my life until living in those apartments. There is scientific research and studies about this phenomenon, and so that dispelled any supernatural notions that I may have entertained for a time. But these episodes were horrifying. It hasn't happened since I left and relocated, so moving on to the next oddity. Electronics started going off at random times in my apartment, especially kids' toys. My daughter had one toy with a singing mechanic. You hit one of the buttons, and a short song plays. This thing would just start playing songs, and it got to the point where it was so common, I would make jokes about a ghost playing tricks again. She had a plastic tea kettle that played a little jingle, and that thing started doing it too. It's super weird to be sitting at home and all of a sudden, in another room, a creepy little jingle starts playing. I wrote it off as faulty mechanics. I didn't research because, well, they're kids' toys. I mean, stuff like that just happens. Here's the next oddity. I spoke of a few characters that lived in my complex, and I hate to use the term unsavory, but a more appropriate word just evades me. Just a few people whom I assume were having substance problems. You probably know the type. Never did I witness anything major from this person or that person, but you could tell drugs were somewhere in the picture. One of my neighbors in an adjacent building would be up late hours in the night, outside mowing his yard. At like 2:30 in the morning, like the sun was shining and the birds were chirping, mowing his lawn without a care in the world. He planted flowers and stuff around his place, but he used cemetery soil. He was confronted by another concerned neighbor who spotted him late one night going over to the fence separating the apartment complex with the cemetery with a small shovel and bucket in hand. He went over the fence, began digging up dirt, filling his bucket, and bringing it back to his apartment to use for his flowers. When asked why, he said the soil in the graveyard is just better. More nutrients. He wasn't digging up graves, rather just the landscape around them. I thought that was super weird and creepy. One night, late, I was sitting at home, about to call it a night and hit the bed when I heard a knock on my door. It's almost midnight. Who's at my door? I go to my door and definitely don't open it, but I ask, "Yeah? Who is it?" The person asked, "Is Matt home? I need to talk to him." "No one here by that name," I said. "You must have the wrong place. No Matt lives here." At this point, I got a good look through the peephole, and it was a super sketchy looking dude, looking around all crazy and seemingly on something. He argued with me for a few, claiming that he was certain his friend Matt was in my apartment and that he needed to see him about something. After some back and forth, the guy left. Come to find out, the next day, an elderly neighbor's place was entered by this same guy. Apparently, the older patron left his door unlocked most always, and this sketchy guy just checked random doors, like mine, until he found one that was open. I honestly can't remember what he ended up taking, but he never got caught, to my knowledge. I can't help but think what would have happened had I opened the door that same night when he came knocking. Why am I sharing this stuff, you may be asking? Well, I'm trying to give a lay of the land, a bit of some backdrop, you could say. So, what caused my shirt to disappear and show up half a year later? Again, what I'm about to share is simply my most plausible story. I think that a certain someone gained access to my home one day when I was at work or when I was at my girlfriend's overnight. I think this specific person eventually felt bad and, after a long time, regained access to my home and placed the shirt back. They may not have had time to hang it up properly and just placed it at the foot of my closet. This would explain the way the shirt was folded. Now, who was the perpetrator? Well, I believe it was the landlord's granddaughter. This explains how she would have gained entry to my apartment. She had access to the landlord's office, her grandmother. and she could have easily retrieved a spare key for my apartment. She was around 26 at the time, according to my ex-girlfriend, who knows the landlord well and her family. To protect her identity, I'll call her Summer. She also lived at the apartment complex too, just a couple of units down from me. Now, why do I believe Summer did this? Good question. I've considered this over and over, and I believe she had an unhealthy fascination with me. Maybe a weird fixation might be the better term. The reason I say this is because I caught her red-handed one night trying to break into my minivan. This event happened much later on, after my shirt found its way back to me. I was up late night watching TV when I heard some commotion directly outside my apartment. I look out the window, and there's Summer going around my minivan trying to open a door that might have been unlocked. But to her dismay, I lock my doors. I quietly watch, and she's not giving up. She's looking around to see if anyone's watching, and she proceeds to pull hard on my van doors. Finally, enough was enough, and I march outside and confront her. "Summer, what are you doing? I can see you through my window trying to break into my van." She remains silent. She doesn't say a word and just kinda looks off into space as if nothing is happening. After more questioning and her acting weird and silent, I realize she most likely is on something. She didn't try to run away or explain herself or anything. Summer just sort of froze in this weird catatonic state. I figured it had to be drugs, so I convinced her to go back to her apartment and go to bed. I promised that I wouldn't call the cops and that she just needed to get some sleep. I watch her go into her apartment, and then I walk back into mine. Minutes later, I heard those same sounds, my van being tampered with. Here we go. So I go to the window, and now Summer is walking up my steps and trying to open my door. It's locked. I call my girlfriend, who, again, knows her and her family, and ask her to walk down and help me talk some sense into Summer. As much as I wanted to call the law, I felt like I couldn't. It may cause issues between me and the landlord, plus, I kinda felt bad for this girl. She was clearly in a rough state of mind. After hours of me and my girlfriend talking with Summer, she finally calms down and agrees to stop trying to break into my van and into my home. I didn't mention yet, but my daughter is sound asleep upstairs. You can understand my worry. The next morning, Summer's mom comes down from out of town and picks her up and takes her to stay with her for a couple weeks at the behest of my girlfriend calling her. She explained the crazy night with Summer and all that took place. It was determined that Summer had a mental break or some lapse in her psyche. I had heard that she suffered from both mental issues and drug problems. After that incident, some time had went by, and I began to consider the fact that maybe it was Summer who had taken my shirt and then brought it back eventually. I couldn't be sure, but after that episode with her that one night, I wouldn't put it past her. So, I decided to ask her. Summer would come and stay at her apartment a while and go stay with her mom from time to time. This was her routine. At the time, I decided to gently confront her. She'd been to rehab and clean for a few months, but she wasn't down here. She was up at her mom's. She had a baby and was staying with her mom so that her mother could help with the baby. But I just had to know. I had to know that my shirt didn't just glitch out of existence one day and then reappear a while later. I had to ask her. I called my girlfriend and told her my theory, but was abruptly stopped. "Didn't you hear?" she asked. Did I hear what? I responded. She said, I assumed the landlord told you. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Summer passed away last week. She died of an overdose. And then silence. Time seemed to stand still. My shirt theory no longer mattered. This young person, this young mother, had passed away. I was incredibly sad and taken aback. I thought she was doing well. I thought she was clean and sobering up. Apparently, Summer had left her mom's one day and never came back. She was reported missing and found a day later, overdosed in her car on the side of the road. It's an extremely sad event, and to this day, I still think about Summer every now and again. I think about how tragic it was that such a young person is no longer around. I think about her little daughter who will never get to know her mom. I think about the potential that was there and how drugs ripped it away. Sadly, this is the case for a lot of people nowadays, young and older. It's just tragic. In the end, I don't know what happened with my shirt. I suspect that I do know what happened, but I can never be certain now. The shirt means nothing when it comes to someone's life being lost. That's the true mystery here. How a young person can vanish so quickly and leave behind a daughter and family who have to deal with the loss. Anyway, that's my story. I'm sorry that it ended like this, but I promised an update with my theory, and there it is.